So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Arizona Educational Foundation's A+ School of Excellence info session. My name is Dr. Teresa Hill. I just recently started with AEF in January. Before that, I was a high school principal at Walden Grove High School for 11 years. And we were an A+ School of Excellence in 2017. So I'm excited to be working with AEF and being here to help you navigate through kind of this application and this whole info session process. So a little bit about AEF. Our mission is that we believe amazing things happen in schools every day. And so our main mission is to celebrate excellence and cultivate equity in pre-K through 12th grade Arizona public education. And we do this through a variety of programs. We sponsor the Arizona Teacher of the Year. We sponsor this A+ School of Excellence program. Something that I have to definitely talk about right now is the Arizona Spelling Bee. I'm actually in Washington right now because the Scripps National Spelling Bee is going on, and our Arizona winner, Aaliyah, who is 11 years old, has just made the finals. So she is one of 12 out of 243 that started on Tuesday. So we're super excited. She'll be on the finals tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern or 5 o'clock Arizona on ION channel. So if you get a chance, please go watch her and support her as she has this awesome experience being a finalist. A couple other programs that we have is our World program, our Teach STEM program, Principals Leadership Academy, and Take Your Legislature to School. So lots of programs to celebrate and support schools. I would be remiss to not mention our sponsors. We are a nonprofit, and without their support, all of these things would not be possible. So I'm not going to read them all to you, but just take a quick look. And if you get a chance to contribute in any way to these companies, know that they support AEF and therefore support public schools. So the purpose of the Arizona, the A+ School of Excellence program is to identify and give public recognition to outstanding public schools. It is the only state recognized program for public schools in Arizona. It also provides a comprehensive framework for key criteria for school effectiveness, and it serves as a self-basis for self-assessment and planning. And it also facilitates communication and sharing of best practices within and among schools. So there's 4 parts to the A+ process. The first part is the application. So if you are applying, you should kind of already be in this process where you're gathering information to apply. And then once you have turned in your application, there is a pre-screening where a group of judges will review your application, determine that if it is worthy enough of a school visit. If it is, then a school visit happens. Another group of judges will come out for a day and a half to see your school and verify that what is in the application is actually in practice at the school. And then from there, that team of judges brings it to the whole group of judges to determine if you receive the A+. And if you do, then awards are given and celebrations happen. So in order to apply for the A+, there are several eligibility requirements. First, you must be a district public or public charter school pre-K through 12th grade. You must have an A or B school rating from the Arizona Department of Education. I will say with the pandemic and with the changes of assessments, currently we are allowing schools to apply if they do not have an A or B, but there is more that needs to be submitted with that. So if you feel that you are not an A or B school, but you deserve this recognition, you can reach out to me separately, and I will give you the link for the supplemental information needed to apply. Your school must also be in the 5th full year of operation. And as a school principal, you will have to have completed at least 3 full years consecutively. There is also a possibility if you have not completed those 3 full years, if you were, say, an assistant principal when the school was going under A+ application before, and was a big major factor in that process, and then you're now the principal. So if you have a unique situation like that, you can also reach out to me to see if you're eligible for that. A couple other eligibility requirements are not refusing an OCR access to the civil rights complaint, not have a pending suit with the U.S. Department of Justice for civil rights, or Constitution's Equal Protection Clause. And if you're a current A+ school, you may not reapply before the end of your current application cycle. And if you're not sure when that is, again, you can reach out to me and I can make sure that you know exactly when it is. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the application. There are 9 sections to the application. It is very lengthy. And we are going to cover each of those sections because if you are applying, we want to make sure that you are submitting the best application possible. It's a lot of work and a lot of effort, and we want to give you the best chance at being able to get a site visit. So to start with, sections 1 and 2, not going to go as much into detail on this because this is kind of the hard data about your school. So your overall school overview, like your enrollment, your racial and ethnic composition, your demographics, how many teachers you have, how many support staff members you have, what's your free and reduced rate, what's your SPED percentage, what's your ELD percentage, what's your attendance rate. What I can say with sections 1 and 2 is that you want to make sure that you have a contact person at district. Many times this information is very easy for them to acquire and may take you as a site principal longer to gather the information depending on what student database system you use and what access you have. So having somebody at district help you gather these numbers is super helpful. Section 3 is the school summary, and this is where you begin writing. And this first section is the school summary narrative. It is a 1,000-word limit. Many of the sections are about 1,000-word limit. And every section is going to have bullet points. It is crucial that you write and make sure that you hit each of these bullet points because when the judges are screening your application, they are going to use a rubric, and that rubric is based on these bullet points. So use your bullet points, not just to guide your reading, but to really be your map, writing, but to be your map of your writing. So the first thing that you want to include in your school summary is your school name, your city and state. You want to make sure that you include your vision and your mission. If you have a school motto, you include that, your values, and also the process that you use to develop them. You want to make sure that you are bragging about your school, sharing the strengths and the accomplishments of your school, and the uniqueness with any key initiatives and accomplishments that distinguish your school from others. You also, in this section, want to make sure you describe your major challenges that you have faced in the past 5 years. I know there's a similar challenge with the pandemics that many of us have faced, but you may have unique ones to your school as well. And with describing those challenges, you want to make sure you talk about how you have successfully managed them and what the school and community has learned from those challenges. You also want to have a section that talks about anticipated future challenges and the school's plans to address them. For example, many of the challenges that schools are facing now is the SEI, social emotional part of our students, and what are many schools are doing things specifically to address that situation with our students. And then the last part of your school summary is that you want to conclude with a strong statement about what makes your school an excellent place for students to learn, grow, and thrive. Section 4 is your effective schools evidence. And this is your data that shows what your grade ranking is and possibly other information. So when you do this page, it really is graphs and any type of data that shows the hard data of how excellent your school is. One thing that you don't need to include is your AZM2 scores. The judges do have access to those, so they will be able to see your scores, but you do want to use charts, graphs, and depict any quantitative or qualitative data. You also want to use quantitative data that reflects your evidence of excellence using any of the types of data that you have in your school system. They could be benchmark assessments, DIBELS assessments, AP placement, AP scores, your AZCCRS points. Maybe you have a specific reading program that you use and it creates data for you. So any of those data pieces that reflect your evidence of excellence, you want to add on this page. Also, if you have any quantitative data from unique programs that you're highlighting in your application, you want to make sure that you add those there so that we can see, or the judges can see, the effectiveness of those unique programs. When you're doing this page, you can also add a couple other things. You can add attendance and behavior data, but you have to make sure that that is not your only indicator. It can just support all your other data that you have. And same thing with teacher-created assessment data. You can use that as well, but it cannot be the only data that you present. Once you have that page, you also will need to provide an explanation of your data. So an analysis of it and how that data is connected to telling your story about your school. For section 5, this is a strong instructional leadership. And in this section, you're going to talk for the first part about the leadership structure. So you're going to describe the leadership structure, the roles, and the functions that are important at the school. So key is your principal and or administrative team, the role and the style of those people and how they play into the school. Same thing with key stakeholder voice. Any shared decision-making processes you want to make sure that are added in here, and the process in place for leadership to guide teachers' efforts and to support student needs. The second part of this section is the school improvement process. And here you want to describe your strategic plan or your improvement process and how you organize it and how it's managed to ensure continuous growth and improvement. This is a 1,500 word limit. And here you're going to explain your research, how your research findings and your data analysis guide your school improvements, the school's collaborative school improvement or strategic planning process, any PD and collaboration support related to school's improvement process, and then also how data analysis and interpretations are used to identify, develop, implement, and assess the effectiveness of improvement or strategic planning. In section 6, school organization and culture. So the first section is a 1,000 word limit, and here's where you're going to talk about your values, your beliefs, and your traditions, and explain how underlying school values and beliefs and traditions ensure that people work together to solve problems and confront challenges. So key things is, how does the school communicate and monitor the culture and values of the school to all stakeholders? And how are observable behavior actions of all stakeholders reflected a positive climate at the school? You want to make sure that you're describing in detail activities and celebrations that support that culture and climate as well. The second part of this section is the school environment, and you want to explain how the school environment or climate is conducive to learning for all. So in this 800 word limit, you want to show how the school creates and monitors and sustains a collaborative, cooperative, safe, and orderly environment. And you want to give specific examples of how non-teaching staff members support and affect the school culture. You also want to make sure you talk about how the school fosters positive interactions, respect, cooperation, and collaboration between and among students and adults, and promotes a healthy peer climate among students. Section 7 is the guaranteed viable curriculum and meaningful assessment. And in the first section, you're going to talk about curriculum and best practices and describe how the school's curriculum reflects the use of practices across all grade levels. So you want to talk about the implementation of your clear curriculum articulation. how teachers collaborate, how you ensure vertical and horizontal alignment, how essential content is defined, sequenced, and organized to maximize student learning. And you want to include descriptions of policies and procedures that protect instructional time. You also want to make sure that you have procedures and tools used to monitor the consistent implementation of essential curriculum, and detail the processes that are in place to review the curriculum and how these processes reflect a school-wide commitment to continuous improvement. And if you have any research-based references to support the tools that you're using, then you want to make sure that you are referencing those well as appropriately. The second section in section 7 is unique program, and you want to choose one unique program to discuss. And as you're thinking about what that one unique program is, you want to think about what sets your school apart in your district and or community. And do you have a signature program or another unique initiative that may drive enrollment or support a unique school or community need? How does this program shine your school? And you really want to try to avoid common foundational programs such as RTI. Most schools are using RTI or PBIS. Many schools are using them. And I'm not saying that you can't use them, but if you are going to use something like that, you really want to make sure that you're highlighting how it's unique to your school and the unique twist that you have on it to fit your school needs. The next section is opportunities for challenging content. So you want to describe how all students, including learners with unique needs, have the opportunity to learn challenging content and achieve at high levels. So you want to talk about the process for identifying and placing students in various programs. And you also want to talk about how programs for diverse learning groups relate to the overall curriculum and how students are integrated into the mainstream classes. You want to make sure that you're talking about strategies that you use to address different learning styles and needs, and how these offerings relate to the overall curriculum and provide examples of their success. You really want to make sure that you're including various groups. Many times the SPED group is looked at and talked about, but there others aren't. So you need to look at all the unique groups that you have on campus and how you are tailoring their education so that it is meeting each of their needs. So for example, you could also look at the gifted population, the ELD population. Those are just a few of the various groups that you could have included as well. Only for high schools, if you are a high school, you also need to add this section where you are looking at your curricular offerings. And so in this area, you're looking at offerings that provide rigorous educational opportunities that transition students to post-secondary education and or careers. So some examples of this can be outside and honor curricular offerings, such as if you're an IB school, advanced placement programs and classes that are offered, dual credit courses that are offered, maybe online, CTE, AVID, any of those unique programs that you add to your curriculum base and offerings for kids to be able to transition to post-secondary. And then you want to explain how these offerings relate to the overall curriculum and provide examples of the success of these programs. Section 8 is your active teaching and student support. So for the first section, you want to describe what administrators and visitors at your school would observe on any given day. What might they see and hear teachers and students doing? And what evidence of student learning would be visible? The second part is opportunities and resources, and you want to explain how your school is helping students understand that they are citizens of the world. So what opportunities and resources are available both inside and outside of the classroom? How are students engaged in service learning or similar type of collaborations with local groups that can help them connect to the world beyond their schools? And what resources are provided to support these efforts? The next section is the needs of student populations. So you want to share how the non-academic, social, emotional, and cultural needs of the student population are addressed and responded to. So how does the school identify, assess, and meet the specific needs of all? And you want to describe the non-academic services and programs that are available to support students. How are all students encouraged to build sustainable, caring relationships with each other, with teachers and other adults on campus? And you want to make sure you describe systems that are in place to help students learn how to handle frustration, anger, teasing, bullying, and any other negative interactions. You also want to make sure you articulate school-wide systems that are in place to address and minimize the effects on school climate of negative factors. And you want to talk about strategies that are in place to ease transitions and provide support for transfer students, first-year students, or family moves. And then any specific examples of student success as a result of student interventions. Our last section is section 9, caregiver and community involvement. So what is the role of families, partnerships, and community, and what role do they play in supporting learning in your school? So you want to talk about the goals and the priorities of the school, family, and community partnerships, and how they're communicated to stakeholders. You want to describe any challenges that you may have if the school faces with caregiver involvement or developing partnerships or participation. And you want to make sure you're specific about those and describe how partnership goals are collaboratively developed with stakeholders. You also want to make sure that you cite ways in which the school involves all families in school initiatives and programs to build a shared commitment to student success. And then you want to detail how you recruit volunteers, how they're trained, and how you make them feel like they're an integral part of the school. In the next section of section 9, you want to use your educational resources and community. So you want to explain these resources that you have in the school and community and how they extend learning opportunities for students, teachers, and families. So the bullets here describe if and how school partners with outside entities provide extended learning opportunities for students and or PD opportunities for staff. Provide any examples of any extended learning opportunities that demonstrate a positive effect on relationships, student learning, and or improved student performance. And then detail any services, if you have any, that are provided at or through the school in the areas of health and social services, adult education, or referrals to community agencies. And then you want to describe your relationships with any outside agencies that utilize school facilities outside of the regular school hours. So with that, as you're writing your 9 sections, because that's the most lengthy part of it, or as you're writing your application, the one thing that you need to remember is that you want to tell your story. You should involve as many members of your community as you can to have their voice in that application. So create a system where you're assembling a diverse application team. And when you're writing, you want to make sure that you're using specific examples and quotes. And stay away from general buzzwords unless you have very specific examples to go with those buzzwords. But you don't want to write generally. You want to make sure that you're using those examples and quotes as much as possible. One of the challenging pieces of the application is that you want to include everybody's voice or as many people's voices as you can. So you want to have multiple writers, but you want to have only one voice. And so one way to do that is using tools such as Google Docs, and then having several groups respond to each of those sections so that they're able to maybe give in bullet form examples of things that happen in the school that tie directly to that section. And that way, when the one writer is going to write it and put it all together, it's easy for them to see those examples, but not have to try to change the voice of someone else. Once that is written, you want to make sure that it's proofread and spell checked by multiple people. And it is quite a process. So you want to start early and you want to submit early. So the application is due on August 31st for this following school year. And that deadline is final. My suggestion is that you're submitting it a few days ahead so that if there's any technical issues and you have time to make sure that it does get submitted and you can confirm that it was submitted so that you don't miss that deadline. In we've actually had a couple of these info sessions. This is our third one in a few months. And one of the things that was suggested from the feedback of those is to create some application samples. And so what I've added to this session is that example. So we're going to look at the school summary narrative. And just as a reminder, here are the bullets of what you should write or what should be in there. And so I kind of highlighted or changed the font of the color of the font for the one things that you definitely need to make sure in there. So the school name, the city, the state, the vision and mission statement, the values, the strengths and accomplishments, the major challenges in the past 5 years, the future challenges, and the summary with a strong statement. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to show you a sample application section on school summary that was considered not exemplary, so that you can compare that to one that was exemplary. So I am not going to read this to you. I'm going to let you read it. So I'm going to give you a few minutes just so you can read it. I did highlight the sections that are in the bulleted form of this section. And I did, for anonymity, change the names of places and names of schools, but it is an actual application section that has been written in the past. So I'll give you a few minutes. Sorry about that. And once you have finished reading this section, you can stop before it gets to the judge's score. If you don't mind just giving me a thumbs up in your reaction so I know that you are done, so that I give everybody the amount of time that they need to finish reading. All right, don't forget to give me a thumbs up if you're done reading. All right. Does anybody else need more time? I see some thumbs up in the chat and I saw some on the actual, your little pictures. So just come off mute if you need a little more time. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this one. If you noticed, of the 1,000 words, there's only a small section that hits on those bullet points. You see the school name, not necessarily the city and the state that it's in. You do see one challenging area of the neighborhood, talking about the neighborhood. So that's a challenging thing that they responded to by increasing space for open enrollment. And then you see them talk about the vision and the mission. Most of this section is just talking about the history of the area, but not the details of the school. So there are 3 levels in the rubric. You can receive an inadequate, an adequate, and an exemplary, and your goal is to get as many exemplaries as you can. So the judges that scored this did score it inadequate, and their feedback was that they'd like to see more elaboration on strengths and accomplishments of the school. Although the narrative is unique and interesting, that it's not relative to what they're looking for in that application. Also, they'd like to see more challenges that the school's faced in the last 5 years, how they've been addressed, and also what they anticipate as future challenges and plans. And then it's always key at the end to end with a strong statement. And by just copying your vision and mission statement, that's not necessarily a strong enough statement. So now let's compare that to one that was considered exemplary. And as you finish this, again, if you could give me a thumbs up, that would be great. So I know that you're done. All right, if you need more time, if you could come off mute and just let me know you need more time. Okay, I'm going to escape because I noticed that, let's see if I can escape this whole thing here. I noticed that the bottom got cut out, and it's important that you see what that last part is, because that's one of the things. So I'm going to move that up and then add that back in, sorry. Okay, so now you can read that last line there. Together, we are all committed to fulfilling the mindset and motto of expect more, receive more, and achieve more. So if you notice, this was scored exemplary by the judges, and pretty much the whole thing, even the part that I didn't highlight, is really all part of the bullet points that were given. So again, if you're using those bullet points and you're answering all of those bullet points, you're easily going to get to your 1,000-word limit and find that you're going to have to like shave in the way that you write it. And the other thing that I hope that you notice in this is earlier I talked about making sure that you're including everybody's voice and really opening up those answers. I know that when you do that, sometimes as an administrative team, you're able to think of some of the examples that you are doing. But opening it up to the school, I know that I have found that sometimes they will hit on things that I'm like, oh yeah, we do that. I didn't even think about that. So it really is helpful that you are involving as many stakeholders in what is it that we do here at our school that connects to this exact, this section that we're talking about. So before I go on to the rest of the processes, is there any questions with these two examples or with the written part of the application before we move on? Okay, then I will move on. So once you have written your application, the next thing that happens is it goes to pre-screening. Who is pre-screening it? So it'll be a team of experienced administrators and educators, and they come together. It says in person, but I will tell you that last year we did it virtually, and I think that we're going to continue that to evaluate the application, because what we do is we use a team of A+ principals and or administrators that have been through the process and have become A+ schools. And then there's also some Teacher of the Year finalists that are part of that process. And so it's usually anywhere between 4 and 5, anywhere between 3 and 5. 4 is our sweet number, that we try to have at least 4 people evaluating each application. And what happens is they will use a rubric that you can see in our website as well, to see the rubric that they use to evaluate the application. Every application is given serious consideration, whether it is a renewal or not a renewal. And then it is a thorough and comprehensive review of the application. I can tell you it takes easily an hour and a half to 2 hours, sometimes more, for that review to happen. They're reading it beforehand, they're reading it together, they're pulling out all of the details that you find to score it as best as they possibly can. And then from that review, it's determined if there is enough in that application that indicates that you are an A+ school. If they feel that there is enough in that written application, then they will determine that you receive a site visit. And as stated before, the application can take, it says 1 to 2 hours. I think it's more like 2-ish, 2.5, maybe sometimes 3, depending on the application. So if you get a school visit, then what will happen is a team of experienced administrators and educators will come to your school, and they're going to visit in person. This will take a day and a half, and their entire job is to verify that what you wrote in the application is actually physically happening at your school. So they want to make sure that that alignment is there, and it's not just, hey, these are all the great things that we're doing, but then they don't physically see them. So that's their goal, is to verify what you wrote in your application is actually happening at your school. They will visit every single classroom, They'll do interviews with the stakeholders, and generally they'll take in the atmosphere and the culture of your school as well. So they're there to gather as much information as they can in that day and a half about your school. So when you're planning your visit, first thing is that you want to make sure you're being authentic. Sometimes when I was talking about involving your other stakeholders, sometimes teachers will maybe throw something in there and you're like, yeah, that kind of happens with some of us, but not all of us. I'm going to choose to not put that in there because it's not something that's happening across campus. So you want to be authentic to what you put in your application. And then in your application, you actually in the first section have to pick what days we can visit should you get a site visit, and you want to make sure that you're picking 2 days when all your staff and students are present. So you don't want to have a day when the entire 6th grade class is going to the Grand Canyon and those teachers and those students aren't going to be there. Or if there's, say, a big band competition or something like that, where you're going to have 200 of your kids off campus. So pick 2 days where all your staff and your students are going to be present. You also want to make sure that you showcase your unique program. If you're talking specifically about, let's say, you've got a dad watch program and the dads come in before school to help greet kids and be part of your campus, but they only do it once a week, then you want to pick one of those 2 days when the judges can actually see that program in action and not just hear about it. I put business as usual as a question mark because yes, you want to be business as usual, but you also want to make sure that you're doing everything you can to show off your school. So you should have it tidied as best as you can. You want to make sure that everybody's being authentic and being themselves, but also they realize that this is an important thing and that they're, you know, doing their best to show their best foot forward. During the classroom observations, you will get feedback from the judges. Every single teacher will get feedback, and know that they are looking for active engagement, teaching to the objective, all of those key things that are important. And we know that 100% of your teachers may not be rock stars, but the overall feel of what's going on in the classrooms is really kind of what's taken from that. Also, the stakeholder meetings, it's really important that when you're scheduling those stakeholder meetings, that they're put somewhere where it's private. For example, sometimes people will schedule them in the library and the librarian is sitting in there. We want to make sure that when we're meeting with students or staff or support staff or with the community, that they feel comfortable enough to share with the judges honestly and authentically. And having somebody else in the room can deter that and make that very difficult. So really find a place where it's private. You will use your meetings for each of those groups. So for example, when you have your certified and your support group, pick at a time when most of them can already come. And then those that, like, say, maybe your front office where you always need somebody there, arrange it so that maybe you or your administrative team is covering the front so that they're able to come to the meeting. And then when you do your parent and community group, you really want to make sure that you're mixing it. It's very common to use your PTO president because they're active, you're connected with them, but really trying to mix up the group of parents that come. Maybe it's a parent who maybe wasn't on your side at the beginning, maybe they had a problem, but then by the time you've dealt with them and they saw and you've kind of turned their idea of what they thought the school was around to a positive one, that can really support you and help you in that community meeting as well. So try to get a wide variety of people. And if you do have partnerships, bringing those people into that meeting is important as well. And again, when you're setting a place for your judges to be, you want to make sure that it's in an area where they can feel comfortable to be able to talk and people aren't walking by and looking in the window or constantly coming in. It should be a private space. It's always nice, judges like it when you give them a parking space so that they're not having to navigate parking in the staff parking lot or the student parking lot. So making that easy for them is also really helpful. And then you want to provide a school map, your master schedule, and any other important information. And remember that your master schedule may make sense to you, the way your rotations of your specials go, or the way that the rotation happens, but doesn't always make sense to the judges. So you want to make sure that that's explained, whether it's written or you are able to go in and explain it to them so that they know what it looks like, and so they're able to go and visit all of those classes. Once the visit happens, then the judges will gather all of the information, and then they will bring a report to all of the judges that were involved that year. And at that meeting, after they give the report, they will give a recommendation on if they believe you should be an A+ school or not. If what they saw on the application is verified, then they will recommend a yes. And then all of the judges together will make one final vote. If you are awarded the A+ School of Excellence, as soon as that meeting is over, you will be contacted, whether you get a yes or a no. And if you do get a yes, then you get to plan your celebration. The A+ celebrations are unique to each of the schools. They look a little bit different at each of the schools, but the key is that you're involving all of your stakeholders, your students, your staff, your community. It's a big deal to get an A+, and you want to make sure that everybody is celebrating that. It's quite the process. If you haven't been through it already, you'll quickly realize, even just reading through those 9 sections, it is quite a process to go through. And so you definitely want to make sure that you have a celebration at the end, and someone from AEF will be there as well to celebrate with you. So as I said, this is quite the process. So why do this? I can tell you from my own experience that it is a great way to self-reflect. Despite the fact that it's a lot of work, it does bring your community together, and it does provide valuable feedback. You know, you're looking at all the great things that your school is doing, and sometimes your staff needs to know that, and they need to remember and reflect on that, especially on these really tough times. What are the good things that we're doing? So it does increase their confidence, and it does increase public confidence. Greater parent community involvement, and it is an economic driver. I have had parents say to me, you know, we moved into the area and we purposely wanted to buy a house in your school because you were an A+ school. So it does increase the number of people that want to come to your school just because you're an A+ school. So overall, the benefits are worth it, and the hard work is worth applying. So with that, that's kind of the whole process. And if you have questions as you're going through that process, you can always email me at Teresa@AZED Foundation. And then you can also go to our website. There's a lot of detailed information there. There's the rubric. There's just lots of information as well to help you